History and legends of my oldest ancestors of whom I am very proud descend. The Battle of Simancas. July 19, 939, Battle of Simancas. King Ramiro II of Leão, my 28th, 26 times my grandfather, defeats the Moorish army under the command of Caliph Abderramão III near the city of Simancas. Ramiro II of Leão was the 9th grandfather of Dom Afonso III, King of Portugal. Ramiro II, King of Leon, born in 900 and died in 965, was the son of Ordonho II, King of Leon, and Dona Elvira Mendes de Portucali, paternal grandson of Afonso III, King of Leon, and Dona Ximena Garces de Pamplona, and maternal grandson of Hermenegildo Guterres, Count of Portucali, and Dona Ermesinda Gatones de Vierzo. The Battle of Simancas was a military confrontation between the troops of a Christian coalition headed by the King of Leon, Ramiro II, and those of the Caliph Abderramão III near the walls of the city of Simancas, in which dominance over the Douro lands was decided by the northern Christian kingdoms. July 19, 939. Background. In 937, King Ramiro II of Leon acted in support of Abderramão, also known as Abu Iaa, King of Zaragoza, whom the Caliph accused of being a traitor and mainly responsible for the Osma disaster, which occurred 3 years earlier. The chronicler Sampiro abbreviates the facts as follows. Ramiro, gathering his army, marched towards Zaragoza. Then the king of the Saracens, Abderramão, submitted to the great King Ramiro and placed all his land under the sovereignty of our king. Deceiving Abderramão, his sovereign, he handed over all his domains to the Catholic king. And our king, as he was strong and powerful, subdued the castles of Abderramão, which rose up, and handed them over, returning to Leão with great triumph. Sampiro admits that the Leonese king left the Navarrese garrisons in these castles, as Ramiro had the support and alliance of the king of Pamplona. After the loss of the strategic Zaragoza, Abderramão III's reaction was to surround and conquer Calatrava. Abderramão conquered, one after another, all the castles in the area. Upon arriving at the gates of Zaragoza, Abu Iaa capitulated, an action that the Caliph took advantage of to employ him in an offensive against Navarre that concluded in the capitulation of Queen Toda, who declared herself a vassal of the Caliph. The Umayyad Caliph then conceived a gigantic project to end the Leonese kingdom, which he called Ghazat al-Qudra, campaign of supreme power or omnipotence. The Umayyad gathered a large army motivated by the call for jihad. Since leaving Cordoba, he ordered that the campaign prayer be sung every day in the main mosque, not with a deprecatory sense, but as an anticipation of gratitude for what must be an unavoidable success. The Caliph formed, with the help of the Muslim governor of Zaragoza, Abu Iaa, a large army of around 100,000 men, made up of recruits from Al-Andalus, professional soldiers, Berber tribes, soldiers from the militarized provinces, contingents from the marches, and a good number of volunteers. Well armed and equipped, this heterogeneous mass of fighters undertook the march at the end of June 939. Leaving Toledo, the army crossed the central system through Guadarrama, port of Tablada, then entering No Man's Land, located to the south of the Douro. After plundering and destroying the places they found in their path, Olmedo, Iscar, Alcazaran, the Caliph's contingents camped near the Sega River and established themselves in the castle of Portillo. Meanwhile, the Leonese king Ramiro II managed to gather, in addition to his own troops, those of Counts Fernão Goncalves and Ansa Fernandes, those from Garcia I's kingdom of Navarre, as well as Galician and Asturian troops. The battle, which took place on the right bank of the Pisuerga River, northeast of Simancas, was very violent and continued for several days. Christian chronicles tell of an appearance of Saint Emilian, a Visigothic monk. And furthermore, according to the chronicles, both Arab and Christian, there was an eclipse of the sun a few days before the battle. When the army was near Simancas, there was a frightful eclipse of the sun, which in the middle of the day covered the land with a dark yellowness and filled ours and the infidels with terror, who had not seen anything like it in their lives. 2 days passed without either making any movement. The fight lasted a few days, deciding on the side of the Christians, who forced the Muslim troops to flee, who were unable to take the fortification of Simancas. Abu Iaa was arrested at the end of the fight. After the Battle of Simancas, another disaster occurred for the Muslims in Saurian lands, in what is called the Journey of Alhandega or Barranco. The Muslims, who in their retreat from Simancas had devastated the area of the Aza River on their way to Otienza, were ambushed in a ravine, where they were defeated and put to flight, with the Christians obtaining a great deal of loot. And in their retreat the enemy pushed them into a deep ravine, which gave the name to the meeting, Alhandega, from which they could not escape, many falling and trampling themselves in a sheer crowd. The Caliph, who was forced to enter there with them, he managed to get through with his soldiers, abandoning his real estate and its contents, which the enemy took possession of. Consequences. As a result of the battle, the repopulation line of the Kingdom of Leon advanced to the Tormes River, overflowing the Douro River. The legend of Gaia. The legend of King Ramiro and the Moorish princess Artiga. An ancient legend that dates back to the 10th century tells that King Ramiro II of Leo fell in love with a beautiful blue-blooded Moor, sister of Alboza Albacadam, Moorish king who owned the lands that went from Gaia to Santarem. Influenced by his passion and with the intention of asking the Moorish woman to marry him, Ramiro decided to establish peace with Alboza, who received him in his palace in Gaia. Despite already being married, Ramiro thought it would be easy to obtain the annulment of his marriage due to the family relationship between him and his wife Dona Urraca Sanchez de Pamplona. Alboza flatly refused. He would never give his sister in marriage to a Christian and, in any case, she was already promised to the King of Morocco. King Ramiro, vexed, seemed to accept the refusal, but asked the astrologer Armand to study the stars to decide the best time to kidnap the princess, and managed to take her with him on the appropriate date. Missing his sister, Alboza, completely irate, still had time to find the Christians embarking at the Gaia pier. There was a fight that was favorable to the Christian king, who took the Moorish princess to Leo, baptized her, and gave her the name Artiga, which both meant punished and taught and endowed with all goods. Alboza, to take revenge, kidnapped King Ramiro's legitimate wife, Dona Urraca, along with her maids. When King Ramiro learned of the kidnapping, he became mad with rage and, together with his son and some vassals, sailed by boat to Gaia. Arriving there, Ramiro disguised himself as a beggar and went to a fountain where he found one of Dona Urraca's maids who asked for some water, taking the opportunity to surreptitiously pour half of a precious stone into the water container, of which the queen had the other half. Recognizing the jewel, Dona Urraca sent for the king disguised as a beggar and, in revenge for his infidelity, handed him over to Alboza. Feeling lost, King Ramiro asked Alboza for a public death, cunningly hoping to gain time so he could warn his son through the sound of his hunting horn. Upon hearing the agreed signal, the king's son ran with his men to the castle and together they killed Alboza. Taking Dona Urraca and her maids to his boat, King Ramiro, blinded by anger at his wife's betrayal, tied a stone millstone around the queen's neck and threw her into the sea in a place that became known as Foz de Ancora, it is thought which is the current Villar Praia de Ancora. King Ramiro returned to Leo where he married the Moorish princess, Artiga, from whom he had a vast and noble descendant and from whom he descended several times. Biography. Ramiro II of Leon was responsible for the coalition of the forces of Navarre, Leon, and Aragon against the Muslims, having defeated the armies of the Umayyad Caliph Abderramão III in the Battle of Simancas in 939. This victory allowed the Kingdom of Leon, for the first time, to consolidate the border south of the Douro Valley line. In the last years of his reign he was unable to prevent the easternmost mark of his kingdom, Castile, from being established as an independent county, under the direction of Count Fernão Goncalves, grandson of King Garcia I of Leon through female means. In 950 he launched a new military expedition against the Moors, having defeated them near Tolover de la Reina. Youth. Ramiro, still a small child, was entrusted with educating Diogo Fernandes and his wife, a powerful family that owned vast territories in the Douro region and later also in the Mondego River Valley. These territories were the center of a repopulation nucleus grouped around the policy created around the still child Bermudo Ordonez. Ramiro II is still of particular importance for Portuguese history. He is the first king to call himself king, albeit for a brief period of time, between 925, still in dispute with his brother Afonso IV, and 931, a year after the accession to the throne of King of the land of Portucalense, full recognition of the existence of a land of Portucalense, which had already been established since 868, with the conquest of Vimara Perez and the formation of his condal house at the head of its destinies. Ramiro II married 4 times. From my first marriage to Dona Orsenda Guterres de Coimbra, my 32nd grandmother, 22 times my grandmother, the following were born. Ordonho III, King of Leon, my 32nd grandfather, 21 times my grandfather, married Dona Urraca Fernandez of Castile, and married Dona Munia Sanchez from Pamplona, and then married Dona Elvira País Doza, my 32nd grandmother, 21 times my grandmother. Dona Teresa Ramirez, Infanta de Leon, married Garcia III Sanchez, King of Pamplona, my 31st, 32nd and 34th grandparents. Dona Velasquita Ramirez de Portucali, married to Bermudo II Degrees, King of Galicia and Leon, my 31st grandparents, 21 times my grandparents. From my second marriage to Dona Urraca Sanchez from Pamplona, my 34th grandmother, 20 times my grandmother, the following were born. Sancho I the Fat, King of Leo, married Teresa Anchores, my 33rd grandparents, 20 times my grandparents. Dona Elvira de Leo. From the third marriage with Artiga, Aldara ibn Zayda, my 28th grandmother, 24 times my grandmother, who was the daughter of Zaydan ibn Zayd, grandson of the 7th Emir of Córdoba, and Aragon Fromerix, were born. Alboaza Ramirez, married to Helena Godens, my 27th grandparents. Lavacendo Ramirez married Zahra ibn Zayda, his maternal aunt, for my 30th grandparents, 21 times my grandparents. From the fourth marriage with Oniga of Gaia, my 29th grandmother, 23 times my grandmother, daughter of Zahan Zada, Lord of Gaia, was born. Godinho das Asturias, Count of Asturias, married, unknown, my 28th grandparents, 23 times my grandparents.